All right, looks like it's about that time. Welcome, everyone. My name is Steven Kreutzfeldt. I'm a business process consultant here with CDI, and I'm going to be taking you through this month's Laserfiche Build Along, which is going to be on role-based security. If this is your first Build Along, here's what you can expect. A Build Along is meant to be an interactive experience designed to guide the viewer through creation and deployment of a common business process. By the end of today's Build Along, you will have successfully added a new active user to your repository and restricted rights accordingly. If at any point you have any questions or need help, please post your questions into the chat box as seen here. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for any questions that you may have. To get the most out of today's presentation, please take good notes. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And also, please do complete the survey afterwards. We're always looking for new recommendations for new topics or any way we can get our listeners can get the most from the experience. And lastly, note that this will be recorded and will be available on CDI's YouTube channel an hour or so after the presentation is over. And also, we're always happy to offer individual assistance and sessions for anyone who may be interested. So today's process is going to be on managing security in Laserfiche. This is going to be a more advanced presentation, so it's designed for Laserfiche administrators or advanced users in Laserfiche as well. And if you're following along, we will need access to the Laserfiche client as well as the administration console. So if you'd like to follow along today, add users, add groups, and add security, I recommend logging into each of those applications at this time. High-level agenda for today, we're going to start by creating a user and then assigning that user to a group. We're then going to take a look at metadata security and how we can apply security to metadata templates, fields, and tags. And then we'll finish up by adding security restrictions within the repository itself at that folder and document level. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, I'm already logged into the administration console right now. Make sure that you're logged into the correct server and as well as the correct repository that you want to add users to. And then we're going to expand the users and the groups node here to start interacting with our users. So if we select users, we can see a list here of everyone who is an active user within the repository at this time. I've gone ahead and changed around some of the different columns here so I can see who uses the password, the description, high level what some of their rights and privileges look like as well. But if we right click on any one of these and go to properties, we can start looking at some of the details about each one of our users. And this is where everything stems from when it comes to adding users. So we start by giving them a name. We can see a description. Note that you also always have the ability to link any one of your users to their Active Directory account or domain account. If you're interested in doing that, you can always click the ellipses here, and it'll give you the option to look them up by name and use that search option to link that domain account. If you want your users to have a password to log in with, the password can be set here at the user level. You can also use the generate password option. When creating a new user, an option that you're always given is to have the user change the password at the next login, therefore creating a temporary password that can expire after a certain number of days. And then we always want to make sure that our users are set as a repository named user, someone who's licensed to use the applications. If this user belongs to a group, which in this case, since we're looking at our admin, they do belong to the administrator group. But when you're setting up groups, you can either have the users be set up at the group level, or you can go to the user and then assign them to a group that way. That both are viable options. We can also see high-level rights. So just in general, will this user be able to scan, import, search, print, export, so on and so forth, all the way down to delete? Now, at which level they can bring in import documents or export documents or interact with the repository will be set within the repository itself at the folder or document level, but you can set their high-level rights and feature rights within the user at this location. Similarly, we also have options for the different privileges that can be assigned to a user. Privileges are more so geared toward or centered around administrative rights. So this is the ability to manage trustees or to create tags or manage links. That you'll notice that all of these are grayed out because users cannot modify their own privileges. But you can see, is this someone who's going to be able to manage certificates, edit version comments, things like that. Lastly, we have tags. One of the things you'll see me working with in a little bit is going to be security tags. It's just another way to restrict access and restrict rights for your users is by tagging something as having security assigned to it. And if the individual does have or should have the ability to view items that have that security tag on them, they need to be added here within tags at the tag level to have that access. So now that we've taken a look, let's go ahead and add a new user. So first thing we'll do, I don't know if you saw that, I just right-clicked within the users and said add a new user. We're going to give them a name. We'll give them my name, I'm Steven. Domain account, I'm not linking it, but if you do want to link it to one of your Active Directory users, you can go ahead and click that ellipsis, and it'll bring up the ability to search for them by name. That will give them the option to then log into the repository and other components by using their Active Directory password. Let's go ahead and give them a password as well. And again, if we want this to just be a temporary password, we can mark this box that says that the user must change the password the next time they log in. And also the password can expire after 24 hours, in which case I'm going to leave both these blank. And we want to identify this individual as a repository named user, indicating that they are licensed and have access to the system. You'll also see here that with this checkbox, allow only read-only access. This is a great way to very quickly restrict rights if you just want someone to be able to browse the system but not necessarily make any changes or edit the documents or check them out or anything like that. You can make them a read-only user right from here. Similarly, you can quickly disable them without having to delete them or anything like that by using this box. Now, I'm not going to do anything with groups at this time. With rights, you have a couple of options here. If I do want this person to just be someone who's essentially read-only, but still also be able to search and maybe import documents as well, I can assign that at this level. But what I often like to do, and what really is best practice, is to manage rights at the group level and then also at the repository level. And an easy way to do that would be to leave all of these options unchecked. That way, when you're actually working with the repository, working with groups, you can assign those rights, restrict those rights at that level. So typically, when creating a new user, just leave everything unchecked. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, and we'll see our new user is loaded here as Steven. So now if we take a look at groups, we're just going to look at the properties for the administrators. You'll notice it's very similar to the users, that when we're looking at groups, it's essentially the same options. The only difference here is you're going to be able to see which members or which users are part of the group, and you can add them all here. Similarly, if you want to add your users by their Active Directory account or by as a domain trustee, you can use the search option and add people to groups that way as well. Similarly, we have feature rights. In this case, administrators. Everyone who's in this needs to have access to import, delete, move, all of that. We also want them to have all of the capabilities that come along with assigning rights and privileges as well. So you'll see they have all that here. One thing they don't have right now is access to view documents with a security tag. We could probably change that and make sure that everyone who is in the administrator group can in fact see past our security tag. So we can apply that, and now everyone who's in that group is going to have their rights assigned at that level. Another feature is the everyone group, or more aptly named probably would be the everyone else group. that as soon as you add someone as a user in the system, they're going to fall into the everyone category. So if we look at the properties with the everyone group, we should be able to see in general who everyone is, all the repository named users, and we even see Steven under here as our new individual. Now this does give you the option to go in here and say that everyone or everyone else who I haven't assigned rights to, I at least want them to be able to scan or import. So you can actually set rights for every single user that you have at this level. So one thing I'd like to do though, just to show this, is let's go ahead and add a new group as well. And I'm just going to call it group. And for users, in order to add them, I want to make sure that I'm adding Steven. So select them and just hit add. That simple. And we'll also add sales and scanner just so it's a true group. 3 is a group, right? Is that how the saying goes? We're not going to do anything with LDAP management at this time, but now that we've added our group, we didn't do anything with the different rights at this point. But if we wanted to go ahead and say, like, well, we do want everyone in this group to be able to do everything except delete, we could set that at the group level, but we don't want them to manage trustees or anything like that. So we can apply and hit OK. So next thing I wanted to look at, now that we've created our user and assigned our user to a group, we can start managing security across the different components within Laserfiche. First of which is still done within the administration console would be assigning rights to fields and templates, or metadata, all metadata for that matter. So let's just go ahead and look at one of our templates here. We'll look at client files as an example. Once again, if we look at properties, we can open that up, and in the bottom left-hand corner, we see that there's a security option. So if we open that up, we see that by default, everyone or everyone else has read access and read security access. We won't let them delete it. We don't want them to be able to modify it either. Administrator, however, has the ability to see and manage everything else. If we wanted to give template rights to our new user, we could add that user, and we'll see here that it's looking at domain accounts and users and groups. If we want to limit that to just users, we can select that, and then we see Steven here. So we'll click OK, and then we'll select, we see Steven is added as one of the trustees. And there are no rights here that have been added yet, but we can go ahead and add read rights and modify rights, read security, and change template security. If we don't give him the delete template rights, then he won't have that access. He's not allowed. It's not the same as explicitly denying. Denying means that no matter what, he will not be able to delete this at any point. The reason why we don't typically even use the deny column or explicitly deny rights for anyone is that we do want to be able to manage those different rights at each individual level within the template or within the field. So if we just explicitly deny all rights here, then we make it so he can't delete the template or anything within that. Whereas it's easier to manage at a group or individual level if we just leave this empty and allow it as needed. So typically leave deny open. If you don't want someone to have access to something, just don't allow it. So we're gonna go ahead and apply that and hit OK. Sometimes, at least in our case, we have a lot of templates that have the same field across multiple. One of them maybe being date. And so let's say that we wanted to change the properties on the date to make sure that no one can actually delete it or change the date. Maybe we want the date to come in automatically. So that way we're capturing it and no one can edit that. What we could do is add our user. Once again, we'll limit it by user specifically. We'll select Steven, and we want to give Steven view his effective rights right now. See that he has the ability to read and create. So this is all the rights that are being inherited at this point. We want to assign rights. You should be able to select the date option and then hit modify. So Steven, select field, modify. And we just want him to be able to read it and make sure he can't modify it or delete it. So if we hit OK, then for every single document or folder or anything else that has the date field on it, Stephen will be able to see that date, but he won't be able to modify it. He certainly won't be able to delete it or make any changes to it. It will simply be read-only for that user. Now, the last thing I want to take a look at, of course, was the security tag I was talking about. Tags are another part of metadata, so they can be found under here, the metadata management. And there are two types of tags, hence the blue and the yellow indicators here. If we look at the properties of just a basic tag, this is essentially the same thing as putting a little paper tag on a folder saying that this has been matched. It's used for searching. It's used to group things into a similar group. In this case, I designed this tag as a three-way match for if we wanted to have a purchase order, receipt, and delivery, we want to make sure everything was matched, we could use a tag to do that. But it doesn't do anything else. It's certainly not a security tag. But the difference is that little box right there. So with the aptly named security tag, we'll see that that is checked as a security tag, in which case only specific users will have access to anything that has that tag on it. So this is a way to, rather than manage security document by document, one at a time, you can simply apply this tag to those different documents or to those different folders and lock down security that way to show that only administrators can have access to that. So when we get into the repository itself, we'll see how that can effectively be used. So those are the main areas. That's how you create a user, assign them to a group, and how you can manage security at the field, template, and tag level. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll minimize this. And I'm logged into the LF Financial repository right now as the administrator. So I do have administrative rights. This is our full repository. And now that I have this user, and since I have access to manage the trustees and manage different privileges, I can start to limit what my new user, Stephen, can and cannot see. So the way we do that, it's got kind of a top-down inherited security flow to it. So if you want to make sure that an individual can read everything, you would go to the very top, at the very root, at the repository level, right-click, and go to Access Rights. You'll see here that the only individual who we're managing at the top level is administrators. And essentially what we've done here is that administrators can view, add, modify, delete. They can do everything for literally the entire repository, every single folder and every single subfolder. You'll see here we also have that rights are inherited from the parent. So if you uncheck that, then it'll be managed at each level. Similarly, if we go to incoming scans, which is just the first folder, and look at our access rights, we could actually see effective rights and choose by our different groups to see, let's look at all accounts. Maybe we just want to see administrators. We'll see that they've inherited access rights to view, add, modify, delete, everything is all granted here. What I'd actually like to do is, let's go ahead and make it so the incoming scans, the area where we would scan documents in, let's go ahead and give the rights to our new user. So what we'll do is we'll go down here. You'll notice it's showing us little breadcrumbs about which folder we're looking at right now. And we can add our new user. We'll sort by users. We'll find Stephen. So when we add Stephen, when we select on him, it's saying that since he's been added, he's been given access to do everything. But we actually don't want him to be able to delete or see through redactions or manage security or do anything with records management. So this way he'll be able to view, add, and modify. And we can hit OK. Now let's say that we also want Stephen to be able to view information in the client, but maybe not add anything. We can once again select the folder we're working with, client, go down to access rights, and in this case, we're going to add Stephen again. And we want him to just be able to view. That way he can read only and interact with everything, but he can't make any changes. A similar way to do this is if we wanted to Do the same thing with vendors. We can go down to our access rights. And in this case, rather than adding Stephen specifically, let's take a look at our groups. We'll add group and say that we can, everyone who's within the group, the group can view and read only here. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. So essentially what we've done is said that Stephen can add documents into incoming scans. He can view only the clients, and he can view only vendor. So when we log in as Stephen, we won't even see contract management, employee, or students if this was done correctly. Let's take a look at how this works on documents, though. So we're going to use client Dunder Mifflin, just as an example here. We've got two statements. One's a credit card statement, and one's just a basic financial statement. If we open this up, we can see that I actually made some redactions earlier, so that within the credit card statement, you can select the redaction tool, and we want to make sure that the main credit card number isn't visible. Now we can see through it because we're administrators, and one of the rights that we have is everything within this we can see through redactions. That's a basic right that you can dole out. Similarly, we cross it out here as well. So administrator can see through redactions, but Stephen won't be able to see through these redactions, even though he has view rights at this level. Similarly, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and open up the metadata for the statement 4123, and you'll see that I applied the security tag. Security tags, as I mentioned, are managed the same way that metadata is. So the same way you would assign a metadata field, you can go to the tags tab here, and if it's marked with the security tag, then what comes along with that is the security rights being restricted to any user who doesn't have access to view that document. Meaning that when Stephen comes in here, since he doesn't have access to that security tag or anything with that security tag on it, he will not even see this folder or this document here at all. So we're going to go ahead and sign out, and we'll sign in as our new user, Stephen. So this is the first time Stephen is logged in, and if you're following along, if you did have that checkbox marked that said needs to change password upon first login, this would be the point where our user Stephen would have to change his password. You'll notice that the restrictions worked similar, exactly how I said they would, that Stephen can only see incoming scans, client, and vendor. If Stephen wants to add a new document, he can do that from here. We could also, if we wanted to look at different fields, maybe see if Laserfiche has dates on it. He won't be able to necessarily change the date. The date will come in. Also, if we look at client, we can go into Dunder Mifflin, and the credit card statement is there and visible. Can he open it up and see redactions? No, it looks like not. So when Stephen sees this, the credit card number is blacked out, whereas it was visible for the administrator. So can't see through that. You'll also notice that he can't make any changes to any of the metadata as well, that this is all locked in here. So he can't make any adjustments or changes here either. And the other document that was flagged with the security tag, not visible at all. Now, we didn't do anything with the vendor folder for Stephen specifically, although Stephen does belong to the group. And so if you want to go in here, view invoices, view this, we should be able to view it but not make any changes because we didn't allow access to make any changes to this. So we'll see that even though we didn't necessarily add rights specific to Stephen, because he's in that group, he's going to have the same limited access that anyone else in that group would have, which is why it's also best practice, once again, to rather than assign individuals rights, as often as possible, throw people into groups and then manage security at the group level. It's much faster, much easier. That way, I mean, licenses can certainly be moved around, so it's always best practice to manage it that way. So that, in a nutshell, is how you add a user, add a group, apply security to metadata, as well as folders, and all the way down to documents. Of course, there are a lot of other options, and even when it comes to licensing and things like that, that we don't have time to get into today. But if you have any other questions or would like to meet with someone from our team to learn more about that, certainly let us know, and we'd be more than happy to give you more information on this and help walk you through some of it. There are lots of resources out there. If you do have any questions, 99% of the time, if you have a question about something, somebody else has had it before, and all of those are listed in Laserfiche answers. Typically, if you just Google Laserfiche questions, the first thing that comes up is an answers post. So it's my favorite go-to place when I'm looking for answers, as noted. Also, the Solution Exchange is another great location. And there are also multiple documents out there provided by us at Cities Digital as well over the years. Please join us for next month's webinar. During that webinar, we're going to talk about dynamic templates and show you how you can take tables of massive amounts of information and make it more easily accessible to add to metadata templates and fields. If you fill out the survey, it'll enter you in a chance to win an awesome coffee mug for CDI, showing your support for your favorite VAR. And as always, thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate you, and I'll take any questions you have at this time. All right, so it looks like I have one question here already. I'd like to be able to limit moving folders. Is that possible? So moving folders, that would be simply the change option. So if a folder is, you don't have the ability to move it, or sorry, make any changes to the folder, that will include moving it to another location. So at the folder level, simply select your security and make sure that it's likely either read-only, and that should take care of it. Now, if you want them to make changes to the documents, however, yeah, you'll need to make sure that the documents can have changes done to it, but the folder level cannot be moved. That is an option. And with that, I'll go ahead and end today's webinar. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a good day.